The night was calm and quiet, the stars shining like tiny diamonds in the dark sky, when Riley Carter, a young astronomer at a small observatory on the edge of the city, noticed something strange on his monitor. At first, he thought it was just a glitch, maybe dust on the lens or a software error, but as he zoomed in, the image became clearer and his heart began to beat faster, far beyond the edge of the solar system. Huge shapes were moving, blocking the light of distant stars. They were not meteors, not asteroids. Their movement was too slow, too deliberate, and as the telescope tracked them, Riley counted not one, not two, but dozens of them, each the size of a small moon, traveling together in a formation that looked unnatural, almost military. He leaned closer to the screen, his breath fogging the glass as the shadows shifted, their silhouettes sharp and precise, some with long, thin structures like arms, others shaped like perfect spheres. He had never seen anything like it, and deep inside, he knew this was no ordinary, cosmic event. Far away in the darkness, an alien armada was crossing the stars, coming closer every second. Riley's fingers shook as he typed coordinates into his computer, sending data to the central observatory in the capital. Within minutes, his phone rang. It was Dr. Harlan, his old mentor, his voice low and tense, asking Riley to come to the main research station immediately. No explanations, no questions, just urgency. As Riley drove through the empty streets, the city lights flickered briefly, a strange sign of the power grid straining. When he reached the station, men in dark suits were already there, not scientists, but government agents, their eyes cold and watchful in the main control room. Giant screens showed the same massive objects Riley had seen, except now the images were sharper, more detailed. They were ships. Enormous ships made of black metal that seemed to swallow light itself, and they were moving straight towards Earth. The room was silent except for the soft hum of computers. No one dared to speak loudly. One of the agents turned to the group and said the information must not leave the room. Panic among the public could be worse than the arrival itself. Riley's stomach twisted. He wanted to ask why the world shouldn't know, but the look on the agent's face told him it was useless. Suddenly, a technician at the far corner shouted that one of the ships had broken formation. The screen zoomed in on it, showing the vessel's dark hull gliding silently through space, changing course away from the others, heading directly for Earth at incredible speed. Calculations showed it would reach near-Earth space in less than 72 hours. No signals, no messages, just silent approach. Riley couldn't take his eyes off the screen. It felt like the ship was looking back at him, even from millions of kilometers. Away, the silence in the room grew heavier, as if everyone could feel an invisible hand tightening around their throats. Outside the station, the night wind carried a chill, the kind of chill that made the skin crawl for no reason. Riley looked up at the stars, but now they seemed different, dimmer, almost as if the universe itself knew something terrible was on. The way, deep inside, Riley felt that this was only the beginning, and whatever these visitors were, they had not crossed the endless void of space for peace. Something about their slow, steady advance, their cold precision, spoke of a purpose far darker than anyone dared to say aloud. In that moment, the world was still sleeping, unaware of the shadows approaching, but Riley knew that when dawn came, the sun would rise over a planet already marked by the gaze of something far beyond human understanding. And that gaze was getting closer, hour by hour, heartbeat by heartbeat, towards Earth. The meeting room smelled of coffee gone cold and fear that no one wanted to admit. Screens around the walls still showed the massive alien ships moving slowly. Through the void, the one that had broken formation now halfway across the distance between the fleet and Earth, moving at a speed that made human technology look like it belonged to the Stone Age. Riley sat near the corner, pretending to study his notes, but his ears caught every word of the heated whispers between government officials and military commanders. The decision had been made to keep everything secret from the public, at least until they understood what they were facing. Outside the secure building, life in the city carried on. People shopping, laughing, unaware that a shadow bigger than any storm was gliding toward them. Riley's phone buzzed with a text from his sister, asking if he could come to dinner on Sunday. He stared at it for a long moment, wondering if Sunday would even come. A tall man in a dark suit walked up to him, his voice flat as he introduced himself as Agent Cole, saying they needed Riley's skills because he was one of the first to detect the fleet and had been tracking their course before anyone else. Riley wanted to ask why him, but Cole didn't give him the chance, instead handing him a thick folder marked with red stamps that read, "Classified" in bold letters. Inside were grainy images of strange objects on Earth's surface. Small black shapes in remote deserts, deep forests, frozen tundras. Some, taken only hours ago, the images were from military drones and spy satellites. Riley frowned. They looked almost like the alien ships, only much smaller, Cole explained in a low voice that probes had been falling from the sky for the past 2 days. Unnoticed by the public, their landings hidden by weather, remote locations, or complete silence. Most of these probes had gone still after landing, but 2 were missing, gone without a trace, as if they had walked away on their own. The words made Riley shiver. Machines didn't walk away, not unless they were more than machines. Late that night, Riley was driven in an unmarked car through the dark countryside to a military base. The guards at the gate carried heavy rifles, their eyes scanning every shadow. Inside, in a brightly lit hangar, stood something that took Riley's breath away. An alien probe. Its black metal surface covered in thin glowing lines that pulsed. Like veins under skin, the object was about the size of a small car, shaped like a perfect egg, floating a few inches above the ground without any visible support. Engineers and scientists moved around it, scanning, photographing, none daring to touch it. Cole leaned in and whispered that this was the only active probe they had captured. But even now they could not open it, could not scan through it. Every tool simply failed, as if the object refused to be studied. Suddenly, without warning, the glowing lines on the probe flared bright white for a fraction of a second, filling the hangar with a low humming sound that seemed to vibrate inside Riley's chest. The hum faded, but no one spoke for several long seconds. Then one of the scientists swore under his breath, saying all their equipment had gone dead for. Exactly 7 seconds during the light flash, Riley stepped closer, feeling a strange pull, like the probe was watching him even though it had no eyes. In the corner of his mind, he thought he heard something, a slow, rhythmic sound, faint but steady. Like a heartbeat, Cole's hand on his shoulder pulled him back, telling him they had more to see. In another room, monitors showed live feeds from hidden cameras placed near other probe sites. Most were still and silent, but one showed movement, the image shaking as the camera zoomed in on a tall, thin silhouette moving across the snow of a frozen wasteland. It walked upright, but with an unnatural grace. Its limbs too long, its head too narrow. The figure paused, turning as if it sensed the camera. Then the feed went black, static filling the screen. Riley felt cold all over. Cole said nothing, only walked him back to the car as they drove through the darkness. Riley noticed the stars overhead seemed dimmer again, clouds covering the moon, but the air felt heavier, almost pressing down on the car back at his apartment. He sat by the window, staring at the city lights below, wondering how long the illusion of normal life could last. He knew now that the Armada in space was only part of the threat. Something was already here, walking among the shadows, silent and unseen. And whatever the missing probes had become, they were not waiting for the rest of the fleet to arrive. In the distance, faint sirens wailed. Maybe just another accident. In the night, or maybe something else entirely, Riley closed his eyes, but the sound of that slow alien heartbeat still echoed in his mind, a reminder that Earth was no longer alone, and the silence was only the calm before something far worse. The following morning, the city woke to a strange stillness. The sky was pale and heavy with low clouds, the kind of weather that made sounds seem distant and muffled. Riley sat at his desk in the observatory, his coffee untouched, eyes fixed. On the data scrolling across his monitor, for hours he had been tracking unusual electromagnetic patterns that had appeared suddenly across multiple continents. Faint signals, too weak for normal communication, but too structured to be random. He ran them through the analyzer again, and once more the results came back the same. A repeating pattern that pulsed steadily, slow and deep, like the beat of a giant heart. The signal was not coming from the alien fleet in space. It was coming from within Earth. His fingers froze above the keyboard as the realization sank in. Something down here was answering them before he could process the thought. The phone rang. It was Agent Cole again, his voice urgent, telling Riley to get to the military communications center immediately. No questions, just move. The drive through the city felt surreal, people walking, traffic flowing, life going on, as if nothing was wrong. But Riley's mind was filled with the image of that dark ship speeding toward Earth. When he arrived, the secure building buzzed with activity, technicians shouting coordinates, commanders issuing orders. On the main screen was a visual of the strange signal Riley had been studying, except now it was stronger, louder, filling the entire frequency range with a deep resonance that almost made the walls hum. One of the officers explained that the source seemed to move every few minutes, as if bouncing from one underground location to another. Then, without warning, every screen in the room flickered, lines of static running across them. A new signal appeared, sharper, more aggressive. It carried no words, only a sound like metal grinding against metal. Mixed with that slow heartbeat, the sound grew louder until it felt like it was inside their skulls. Several people clutched their heads. Riley pressed his palms against his ears, but it didn't help. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the sound cut off, replaced by complete silence. In that silence, one of the scientists whispered that something had answered the fleet, and the fleet had replied, a message they could not yet understand. Riley asked if the reply came from space or from Earth. The man gave him a look that said more than words, and turned away. Later that day, Riley was taken to a remote crash site in the desert, a military helicopter landing in a storm of dust. Soldiers surrounded a crater half buried in the sand. At the center lay a piece of black metal about the size of a briefcase. Its surface was smooth but warm to the touch. Riley crouched beside it, running a scanner over it. The screen lit up with impossible readings. The object was emitting the same heartbeat-like signal, but when Riley placed his hand on it, the pulse changed, speeding up slightly. Almost as if reacting to his presence, Cole watched silently, then ordered the soldiers to load it into a secure container back at the base as they ran more tests. The object activated on its own, thin lines of light racing across its surface. Forming a holographic image in midair, it was a map of the stars. But one star glowed brighter than the rest. Earth, and around it, dozens of tiny red marks that spread outward like ripples. Riley leaned closer, and his stomach clenched. The final image in the projection was Earth burning, oceans boiling, continents fractured into glowing lava. The image vanished, leaving only the quiet hum of the object. No one spoke, until one of the technicians said in a low voice that this might not be a threat, but a prophecy. That idea unsettled Riley even more that night, as he sat alone in his apartment. He heard the heartbeat sound again, faint but distinct, not from a speaker, but from somewhere deep in the walls. He pressed his ear to the plaster and felt a vibration, steady and unhurried, as if something alive was waiting patiently, far above. In the blackness of space, the alien fleet continued its silent advance. The lone ship speeding toward Earth, now close enough to be tracked by civilian telescopes. Still no messages, no demands, only silence, and that slow, endless beat, echoing between the stars and the ground beneath his feet. 2 days had passed since the alien map had burned itself into Riley's mind, and the slow heartbeat signal had only grown stronger, now spreading to multiple locations across the globe. The military believed the source was moving, not randomly, but along a precise underground path, as if something was tunneling beneath. The surface with terrifying speed, Riley sat in a dim command room surrounded by glowing screens that showed seismic activity from different continents. Red dots appeared one after another, forming lines that cut across national borders like they meant nothing. One of the scientists pointed to the pattern and said it looked less like mining and more like a search. A search for something specific buried deep within the earth. The thought made Riley's skin crawl. The signals from underground sometimes matched perfectly with the transmissions coming from the alien fleet, as if they were speaking in a language no human could hear. At noon, a sudden alert filled the room. One of the moving underground signals had stopped directly beneath a major city. Without warning, the ground above buckled, causing a subway tunnel to collapse. Emergency broadcasts called it an earthquake, but those in the command room knew better. Drone footage from the site showed twisted rails and shattered concrete, and in the shadows of the wreckage, something enormous moved. The image was grainy but clear enough to freeze everyone watching. A shape unlike any machine humans had built, its surface black and glistening like wet stone, its movements slow but purposeful. Then the feed cut out. Nothing but static. Riley felt a wave of cold pass through him. Later that night, he was flown to a remote military bunker where recovered fragments from the collapse were being analyzed. Under the harsh lights of the lab, the fragments looked almost like bone, but too perfect, too smooth. With thin metallic veins running through them, the head scientist said in a flat voice that, whatever these things were, they were not just machines. They were alive, or at least partly alive. Half technology, half something else, in another section. Of the bunker, soldiers guarded a sealed chamber where they claimed to have trapped one of the smaller creatures that had emerged from underground. Riley was allowed to observe through thick glass. At first, he saw nothing, just darkness inside. But then two pale points of light appeared, moving slowly, like eyes adjusting to the light outside. They blinked once, then fixed directly on him. Riley felt the same sensation he had with the probe, the feeling of being watched deep inside his mind. The lights moved closer, and a thin, elongated shape emerged briefly from the shadows before retreating again, as if testing him. A soldier beside him muttered that it hadn't made a sound since being caught, and that no weapon had been able to harm it. Bullets had bounced off. Fire had left no marks, and even explosives had failed to break the chamber's walls when it was inside. Riley could not stop thinking about the pattern of their movement underground. It was too coordinated to be random. Maybe they were looking for something that belonged to them, or something they had left behind long ago. Back in the war room, new data came in from geological sensors. More underground contacts were moving toward coastal cities, but still avoiding open confrontation. It was as if the main alien fleet was waiting for these underground forces to finish their work before attacking openly. Riley remembered the old historical records he had read, strange events from thousands of years ago, entire villages vanishing, unexplained craters, mass graves of burned cities, all dismissed as myths. But what if those were the last time? These things visited, and what if humanity had simply forgotten? A voice over the intercom announced that a new signal had been detected, stronger than any before, coming from deep beneath the ocean floor, far beyond the reach of human technology. The alien fleet in space responded instantly, adjusting its formation and slowing slightly, as if waiting for the signal to finish. Riley stared at the screen, feeling the weight of the truth pressing down on him. The enemy was not coming. The enemy was already here, moving unseen under their feet. And if they were truly searching for something, then whatever they found would change the fate of the entire planet. Night had fallen over the city, but the streets were not as empty as they should have been. Shadows moved in places where no people stood, and streetlights flickered as if some unseen presence passed beneath them. Riley walked quickly down a narrow road toward the secure transport that would take him back to the military base, his eyes scanning every corner, every alley. The slow heartbeat sound had been haunting him for days, now faintly audible even in the hum of traffic. Earlier, that evening, news had quietly spread through classified channels of several disappearances in major cities, victims taken without struggle, without sound, security cameras catching only the briefest glimpse of tall, thin shapes with glowing eyes that vanished the moment the footage was reviewed. Official reports blamed gangs, crime, or accidents. But Riley knew better. These were the same beings that had crawled out of the collapsed subway tunnels, their underground search bringing them closer to human population centers. At the base, Cole met him with an unusually grim expression, leading him into a darkened hangar where a large black container sat in the center. Guarded by armed soldiers, inside was a piece of alien technology unlike anything Riley had seen before. At first it looked like a sculpture of twisted metal, but then he realized it was moving. Slow, deliberate shifts, like the breathing of something asleep. Thin, glowing lines pulsed along its surface in rhythm with the same alien heartbeat. A scientist whispered that this was recovered from a city street where several people had vanished, found lying in the middle of the road without explanation. Riley leaned closer, and for a moment, the glow from the object brightened, forming vague shapes that looked like faces, human faces, their mouths open in silent screams before fading away. His stomach turned as he stepped back. In the operations center, maps of the city were marked with dozens of red points where similar disappearances had been reported in the past 48 hours. They were spreading outward from the first collapse sites like a disease. Soldiers were deployed to patrol the streets. But even with night vision gear and drones, most patrols found nothing, as if the creatures could sense they were being hunted and simply melted away into the shadows. That night, Riley accompanied a small team into one of the affected districts. The air felt heavier there, damp and cold, the kind of cold that sank into the bones. Buildings stood silent, windows dark. The only sound was the occasional drip of water from broken pipes. As they turned a corner, one of the soldiers froze, raising his weapon. Ahead of them stood a tall figure, its body impossibly thin, arms longer than its legs, skin the color of black stone with faint veins of light running under it, its head tilted slightly, watching them. No movement, no sound. Then, in a blur, it was gone, vanishing into an alley faster than any human could move. The team gave chase, but by the time they reached the alley, it was empty. Only the echo of that deep heartbeat seemed to linger in the air. Later, back at the base, Riley replayed the body camera footage over and over, trying to study the creature's movements, but every time the image blurred just before it moved, as if the camera itself refused to capture it clearly in the days that followed. The disappearances increased, some in broad daylight, with witnesses describing the same glowing eyes in darkened doorways or reflective windows. But when authorities arrived, there was no sign of struggle, just silence, as if the victims had been erased from existence. Riley began to wonder if these creatures were taking people for the same reason they were searching underground. Maybe the humans were part of whatever they were preparing. Maybe they were fuel, or worse, part of the machine itself. Far above, the alien fleet had slowed, holding position just beyond the orbit of the moon. The lone ship that had broken formation now almost in Earth's shadow, its dark shape so vast it blocked the stars behind it, and still there was no message, no demand, only the slow spread of shadows in the streets and the cold certainty that the invasion had already begun. The warning came just after midnight, alarms blaring across the military base as giant screens lit up with real-time satellite feeds. The alien fleet had begun to move again, their formation shifting like pieces on a chessboard, all eyes focused on the massive lone ship that had been racing toward Earth. Now positioned directly between the planet and the moon, its black hull swallowing the light of nearby stars, Riley stood among the officers as a deep, pulsing vibration echoed through the speakers, the fleet's first active transmission. Still, no words. Only that steady alien heartbeat, but now layered with a low rumble that shook the walls. Then, without warning, a beam of energy erupted from the lone ship. A column of white light so intense that it blinded the cameras tracking it. The beam struck the moon's surface with terrifying precision, and a moment later, seismic sensors across the world registered massive tremors. Satellite images showed the impact site boiling with debris as a large section of the lunar surface collapsed inward, forming a crater big enough to be seen from Earth with the naked eye. Scientists shouted about destabilization of the moon's orbit, while generals ordered the activation of every defense system on standby, missiles, orbital platforms, even experimental weapons that had never been tested. Within minutes, Earth's first strike was launched, dozens of missiles streaking into the sky, followed by bursts of energy from hidden satellites. The explosions lit the darkness of space, but when the smoke cleared, the alien ship remained untouched, its surface shimmering faintly as if the attacks had simply been swallowed. One of the officers swore under his breath, saying it was like firing into a black hole. The aliens responded not with another beam, but by releasing hundreds of smaller craft from their main vessels, each one sleek and shaped like a blade. They fanned out, surrounding the planet in tight, shifting formations. Earth's fighter squadrons scrambled to intercept. Dogfights erupted. High above the atmosphere, tracer fire flashing like brief stars, Riley watched the chaos unfold on the screens, unable to look away as human pilots were outmaneuvered again and again by the alien craft's impossible speed. In the middle of the battle, a report came in from ground forces near a coastal city. Seismic activity had spiked and several massive breaches had opened along the shoreline, dark shapes rising from the ocean like living towers of stone, each carrying the same pulsing glow as the underground creatures. Riley realized with horror that the beam at the moon had not been an attack for destruction. It was a signal, a trigger to awaken whatever forces the aliens had planted here long before. Back in the war room, the decision was made to deploy Earth's last line of defense in that region, a massive railgun mounted on a hidden island facility, its projectile capable of piercing an aircraft carrier. The weapon fired once, the sound like thunder rolling across the sea. The slug hit one of the ocean creatures squarely, breaking through its upper shell in a spray of black and silver fluid. For a moment it seemed the thing might fall, but instead, it straightened, the wound closing rapidly as if it had never been struck. Soldiers on the ground began retreating under orders, but reports of missing squads came almost instantly, the creatures moving with unnatural speed, dragging people beneath the waves without a trace. Riley sat frozen, thinking about the alien fleet above, the creatures below, the glowing-eyed shadows in the cities. It was a full assault without ever looking like one, and humanity was already struggling to respond. The battle above continued for hours, until the alien ships suddenly stopped firing, their smaller craft pulling back into formation, the lone giant ship drifting slowly into a higher orbit as if satisfied with the damage done. On the moon, the new crater glowed faintly, a strange light that no one could explain. And on Earth, cities braced for the next move, knowing the first strike had only been a warning. The damaged alien scout ship lay half-buried in the sands of a remote desert, its black metal hull cracked open in several places, leaking faint streams of silvery mist that curled into the air like smoke. Riley stood at the edge of the impact, sight wearing a lightweight breathing mask as soldiers and scientists worked around him, floodlights casting long shadows over the strange curves of the vessel. Agent Cole stood beside him, explaining that this was the first alien craft brought down intact, not by weapons, but by what seemed like a deliberate shutdown, as if the ship had allowed itself to be taken. The idea made Riley uneasy. Yet the opportunity to see alien technology up close was too important to ignore. Stepping carefully across the fractured plating, he entered through a jagged breach. The inside was dim, lit only by faint pulses of blue light that ran like veins along the walls. The air felt heavy, thick with a smell he could not place. The corridors were narrow and curved, no sharp angles, every surface smooth as if grown rather than built. As they moved deeper, Riley noticed that the walls seemed to shift slightly. Under his touch, not metal exactly, but something warmer, almost alive. The team reached a central chamber that opened into a dome, and there, hanging in the air without any visible support, was a massive sphere, its surface covered in intricate patterns that moved like flowing water. Riley's scanner reacted instantly, showing readings far beyond human technology. But the strangest thing was the sound, faint but there. The same slow heartbeat he had been hearing for days, now clearer, stronger, and it seemed to synchronize with his own pulse. One of the scientists whispered that this might be the control core of the ship, but Riley felt certain it was more than that. The sphere shifted its patterns until they formed shapes, images flickering across its surface, a burning earth. Dark shapes descending, oceans boiling red. Then something worse, a vision of countless human figures standing motionless, their eyes empty, their bodies wired into towering black structures, feeding something above. Riley staggered back, breaking the connection. The images vanished. The heartbeat fading to silence before they could investigate further. The lights inside the ship shifted to a deep crimson, and the walls began to hum with a low vibration. Cole barked orders to evacuate, but Riley hesitated, his eyes drawn to a narrow passage at the side of the chamber. Something about it felt like a warning or an invitation. Ignoring Cole's call, he stepped inside, finding a smaller room lined with transparent pods, each containing a strange shape floating. In thick fluid, at first he thought they were alien creatures, but as he looked closer, his blood ran cold. They were human, or at least they had been, their bodies changed, skin pale, limbs elongated, eyes closed but twitching as if dreaming. The tubes were connected by thin black cables that pulsed faintly. Riley's voice was barely a whisper when he asked what this was, but no one answered. The others had already retreated, leaving him alone. Then one of the pods slowly rotated, and the face inside turned toward him, eyes snapping open to reveal a glow like molten metal. The heartbeat roared in his skull, and a voice not his own whispered in his mind, not in words, but in feelings. Hunger, possession, inevitability. Riley stumbled back, breaking the gaze, and ran from the chamber, the hum in the walls now almost a scream. As they fled the ship, the ground beneath it trembled, and with a sound like tearing metal, the entire vessel sank deeper into the sand as if pulled by invisible hands. In minutes, there was nothing left but a smooth crater. The alien craft gone. Riley stood at the edge, his breath ragged, knowing that what he had seen inside was not just a glimpse of alien technology, but a glimpse of their purpose, and it was far worse than anyone imagined. Above, in the black sky, the true mothership appeared for the first time, sliding into Earth's orbit with a presence so massive it blotted out the stars, its surface crawling with lights like a city turned upside down, watching the planet below. The appearance of the alien mothership in Earth's orbit sent a ripple of fear through every level of command, its size so vast that it cast a shadow over entire continents at certain hours, its surface bristling with unknown structures that shifted like living things. Riley stood in the underground command center as the room buzzed with tension, every screen filled with live feeds of the colossal vessel slowly rotating above the planet. Agent Cole broke the silence by revealing something Riley had never imagined. Decades ago, long before the public even believed alien life was possible, world governments had secretly begun building a weapon of their own. Not a missile or a bomb, but a ship, a human-made mothership hidden far beneath the ocean, its existence known only to a handful of people. They called it Aegis, designed to be a last line of defense in case of an extraterrestrial invasion. Now, for the first time, it was going to launch. Riley and a small team were flown to a classified naval facility on a remote island, where a massive steel platform rose from the waves, water cascading off its edges as something titanic emerged from the depths. The Aegis was unlike any human vessel Riley had seen, a fortress of dark alloy bristling with railguns, missile bays, and experimental energy weapons. Its hull reinforced with layers of material designed to resist both kinetic and energy attacks. Stepping aboard felt like entering a floating city, crew members moving with silent efficiency, every station humming with readiness as the ship's engines rumbled to life. Riley was brought to the central command deck, where holographic displays showed the alien mothership's position and the swarm of smaller craft guarding it. The plan was simple but desperate. Aegis would push into orbit and lead a coordinated strike with Earth's remaining satellite weapons and fighter squadrons, hitting the mothership's outer defenses to create an opening for a final assault. As the countdown to launch began, the ocean around them boiled with the force of the ship's propulsion, and within minutes, the Aegis rose from the water, ascending. On powerful thrusters into the upper atmosphere, the view from the deck shifted from blue skies to the blackness of space, stars gleaming beyond the curve of Earth. Ahead of them, the alien mothership loomed larger with every passing second, its surface alive with shifting lights that seemed to watch their approach. The first wave of human fighters swept past, engaging the smaller alien craft in a furious dogfight. Tracer fire and energy beams crisscrossing the void, explosions flaring like dying stars. The Aegis opened fire, its railguns launching tungsten slugs at incredible speeds, some striking alien escorts and tearing them apart, others deflecting harmlessly off the mothership's strange armor. The ship's experimental energy weapon, a massive forward cannon charged with a deep hum that vibrated through the hull before unleashing a brilliant lance of white light. The beam slammed into the mothership's side, tearing away part of its outer plating to reveal a writhing mass of black structures beneath. For a moment, hope flickered among the crew, but the mothership responded instantly, releasing a wave of smaller craft that crashed into the human formation like a swarm of blades. The battle turned chaotic, pilots screaming over comms, explosions lighting the dark, the Aegis's shields flaring as alien weapons hammered its hull. Riley stood at the tactical station, feeding real-time analysis of enemy movement to the gunners. When a new reading appeared on his console, deep within the mothership was a massive energy source, far larger than anything else on board, and it was pulsing in the same rhythm as the alien heartbeat. Cole's voice was grim as he said this had to be the command core, the source of control for the entire fleet. If they could destroy it, the invasion might collapse. But the core was buried deep, far beyond the reach of long-range weapons, meaning someone would have to go inside. The realization hit Riley like a weight. The next phase of the fight would not be fought from the safety of the Aegis, but from within the heart of the alien mothership itself, and he knew he would be part of that mission. The ship shuddered violently as another blast hit, alarms wailing, the captain barking orders to hold position. Outside, the alien mothership began to open, vast sections of its hull peeling back like the petals of a flower, revealing a cavernous interior glowing with that eerie living light. The invitation, or the trap, was set. The Aegis held its position just outside the massive opening in the alien mothership, its shields flaring under constant fire as the infiltration team prepared to launch. Riley stood in the boarding craft's cramped interior, the low hum of the engines mixing with the pounding of his heart. Across from him, Agent Cole checked his weapon with a grim focus. Beside them, a squad of heavily armed Marines sat silent, their faces lit by the dim red glow of the cabin. Outside the viewport, the alien interior loomed, a colossal chamber lined with shifting black structures that pulsed like living organs. The walls seemed to breathe, emitting streams of pale mist that curled into the void. As the pilot brought them closer, massive tendrils of metal and flesh moved slowly in the shadows, like some vast creature was watching. The boarding craft slipped inside, navigating between the moving structures until it reached a narrow platform. Jutting from the inner wall, they disembarked quickly. Weapons raised, the sound inside the mothership was strange. Not silence, but a deep, constant vibration that Riley felt in his bones. The path ahead was a twisting corridor of smooth black material, the surface occasionally rippling under their boots as if reacting to their presence. Deeper they went. Guided by the faint signal of the energy source pulsing like a beacon in Riley's headset, strange alien drones emerged from the walls without warning, their forms sleek and blade-like, moving in sudden bursts of speed. The Marines opened fire, railgun rounds sparking against their armored shells until the drones shattered into fragments that melted into the floor. The team pressed on, every step taking them closer to the heart of the ship. Finally, they reached a vast chamber, so large it felt like standing inside a planet. In the center hung the core, a massive sphere suspended in mid-air, its surface a shifting lattice of black and silver, every movement sending waves of light across the chamber. And with every pulse, Riley felt that same heartbeat, now so strong it was almost unbearable. As they approached, images began to flash in his mind. Not visions this time, but memories. Moments from his own life twisted and distorted. Faces of people he loved speaking in alien voices. The core was inside his mind, testing him, trying to break him. Cole's voice cut through the haze, telling him to focus. The Marines set demolition charges around the perimeter, but the core reacted instantly, the walls of the chamber peeling open to reveal towering figures, part machine, part flesh, their elongated limbs ending in blades that glowed with searing heat. The fight was brutal, every strike from the alien guardians sending shockwaves through the floor. The Marines fought with desperate fury, Riley moving between them, covering their flanks. Each guardian that fell dissolved into streams of light that flowed back into the core, as if it was reclaiming them. The charges were armed, but before they could retreat, the core unleashed a wave of psychic force that slammed them all to the ground. Riley's vision blurred, and he found himself standing alone in a vast, dark space, the core now towering over him like a god. A voice, not in sound but in thought, spoke directly into his mind, offering him a choice: surrender Earth to the collective will of the aliens and live as part of their eternal network, or resist and be destroyed. In that moment, Riley understood that the core was not just a machine. It was alive, a vast mind that had consumed countless worlds, but it feared something: human defiance, the unpredictability of their will, summoning every ounce of strength. Riley rejected the offer. The darkness shattered, and he was back in the chamber, the charge's timer ticking down. Cole dragged him to his feet, and they ran, alien guardians pouring from every opening, the boarding craft's pilot shouting over comms that the Aegis was taking heavy fire and they needed to leave now. The team dove aboard just as the first explosions tore through the chamber, a chain reaction racing toward the core. As they shot out of the mothership's interior, the entire structure began to shudder, massive fractures splitting its surface, light spilling into space like blood from a wound. But the core's heartbeat was still there, faint but unbroken, as if it had not been destroyed, only awakened. Riley stared at the dying mothership, a cold certainty growing in his chest. The real fight was still ahead. The wreck of the alien mothership drifted in orbit like a dying beast, its once smooth surface now cracked and burning. But Riley could still feel it, that faint, steady pulse echoing through his mind. The core was alive, somewhere within the collapsing structure, and as the Aegis pulled back to regroup, every sensor began screaming with new readings. A massive energy surge was building inside the remains of the ship. Then, in a blinding flash, the core tore free. No longer a hidden sphere, but a colossal entity of shifting black metal and burning white light. Its shape constantly changing, sometimes mechanical, sometimes like a vast skeletal creature with wings of energy. It moved with terrifying grace. Drifting toward Earth, every planet-wide defense system came online at once. Missile silos opening, orbital cannons locking on, fighter squadrons scrambling from every base, the skies above Earth filled with streaks of fire as humanity prepared. For its last stand, the Aegis surged forward to intercept, its railguns firing in rapid succession, each shot slamming into the core's outer shell, but barely slowing it. The core responded with beams of searing light that cut through entire squadrons in seconds. The battle spread across the edge of the atmosphere, explosions blooming like deadly flowers, debris raining down toward the oceans. Riley stood on the command deck beside Cole, feeding enemy trajectory data to the gunners. But he knew brute. Force alone wouldn't be enough. The core was too strong, too intelligent, and then it struck directly at them. Not with weapons, but with a psychic assault so powerful the entire crew staggered, voices and visions flooding their minds, offering them the same bargain it had offered Riley inside the mothership: surrender and live forever as part of its vast network, or resist and be erased. Some crew members faltered, gripping their heads, but Riley shouted over the chaos, telling them that humanity's strength was not in its weapons, but in its will. The Aegis pushed closer, weaving between streams of alien fire, drawing the core's attention while Earth's remaining weapons targeted its exposed points. Finally, a gap opened in its defenses, and the Aegis unleashed its forward energy cannon at full power. The beam punched deep into the core's side, tearing away part of its form, and for the first time, the pulse in Riley's head stuttered. The core screamed, not in sound, but in a shockwave of thought that nearly knocked them unconscious. It retaliated with a massive blast that ripped through the Aegis's shields, throwing crew members to the deck and leaving the ship trailing fire. Alarms wailed, but the captain refused to retreat, instead ordering a suicide run straight into the core's heart. Riley felt the deck shudder as they accelerated. The damaged Aegis dodging debris and alien counterfire, getting closer and closer until the core loomed like a sun of black flame. Cole armed the ship's last remaining warhead, one so powerful it could tear apart the largest asteroid, but it had to be placed inside the core itself. They had seconds left, and Riley knew what that meant. He volunteered without hesitation, grabbing a thruster pack and launching from the Aegis's outer airlock, the cold of space biting into him instantly, the core's surface rushing up to meet him, tendrils of metal whipping toward him as it tried to crush him mid-flight. He dodged and rolled, landing hard on the shifting lattice, the pulse now deafening in his mind. He planted the warhead and armed it, then kicked off into the void, the Aegis pulling away at full burn, the core twisting violently, trying to throw the device clear, but too late. In a blinding flash, the warhead detonated, the explosion tearing the core apart from within, its black metal wings shredding into nothing, its light scattering like dying stars. The psychic presence in Riley's head vanished, replaced by silence, pure and absolute. The remains of the core drifted away, breaking apart in Earth's upper atmosphere and burning into harmless streaks of fire. The battle was over. The skies cleared, and across the world people looked up and saw the falling lights, thinking them nothing more than a strange meteor shower, unaware how close they had come to extinction. On the bridge of the battered Aegis, Riley and Cole stood in silence, the weight of survival heavy on their shoulders. But deep down, Riley couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, far beyond the reach of their sensors, a fragment of the core still existed, waiting, watching, learning, and one day it might return.